Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to embark on a journey like no other. Welcome to the Glum Lot podcast,
your go-to destination for a unique blend of recovery and discovery.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mark. And in this podcast, we will endeavor to create a safe and uplifting space for our guests and listeners to share their stories with sincerity and a touch of humor.
Remember, we are not a Glum Lot. The Glum Lot podcast is more than just a source of entertainment. It's a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, recovery is possible. Every story we share carries the power to inspire positive change.
So buckle up, get ready to listen, and join us in discovering the strength that lies within every individual's journey. This is the Glum Lot Podcast, where humor meets hope. Okay, Brett, we are on episode number 5.
Number 5.
Yeah. Hey, I got to make a big announcement. We now have an email. It is theglumlotpodcast@gmail.com. You got to make sure you include the glumlotpodcast@gmail.com. Yeah. It's a big milestone for the show because it took me literally well over 1 minute and 30 seconds to create.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so I really put my heart and soul into it, but it is done. And we welcome any listeners to email us. I know Brett and I do these opening segments where we just kind of, shoot the shit. If there's anything you'd like us to talk about, or if there's any comments you'd like to make, or whatever's on your mind, feel free to email us at the Glum Lot Podcast.
Yeah, we're always up for suggestions.
At
Gmail.
At Gmail. Always up for suggestions. But what's on your mind today?
Mark.
Yeah.
I came into the rooms and I was looking for a solution, right? I just wanted magic to happen.
Right. You just wanted to feel better.
Oh, yep. Wanted to feel better. And, everybody told me everything's going to be okay. Find a higher power. Trust God, the whole nine. And then somebody said something that just kind of was a buzzkill.
What's that?
Do the footwork.
Yeah. It takes action, and there's no magic pill.
That's the thing. Everywhere I went, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, well, you got to do this, you got to do that. You've got to journal. Oh, yeah. God, journaling.
Yeah, I never journaled.
I still don't.
Yeah,
but
some people speak very highly of it. I've just never, instead of journaling because I'm too lazy to write it out, I'm just doing podcasts.
Right. Yeah, that's the easier way.
That's my journaling.
Find a softer way.
Yeah. So yeah, I know what you mean though. It's like you come in and, hopefully in your first couple meetings you gain a sense of hope that these are people who have done what I am trying to do. If I listen to them and I follow their way, I can probably hack out my own path, and I can do this, But it does require a lot of work,
Yeah.
And it's not like it's grueling. It's like you got to show up.
Yeah, but I made excuses as soon as I heard it.
Of course.
I've got ADHD. I can't concentrate. I have never read a book in my life.
Right.
All these things that snuck in
You know what?
immediately.
It's like, wait a minute. You mean this isn't going to be easy?
Right.
If it was easy, everyone would be sober. But it's not.
I thought God was going to do it.
Yeah, right.
And
but it's
let
not
me be
easy.
clear. He does.
Yes.
But there are certain things.
Wait a minute.
Oh, that's true. That's
he
insensitive.
and or she and or it. We'll say that.
Maybe it's a they, them.
How about
I
we
don't
say
know.
this? A God of my understanding. We'll just say that.
Ooh.
That way we cover all the bases.
Maybe that's why they said that.
Yeah. So you're right. It's like if you don't do what you got, if you don't do the next right thing, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
And the people that are successful are the people that keep coming back no matter what, that make their sobriety a priority.
Yep.
We call it primary purpose. And don't listen to the voice in their head that says, well, one meeting a week is enough. Or you don't really need to read the big book. Or, it's asking someone to be your sponsor is awkward. Why don't you just keep waiting? Right?
Yes. You can learn this through osmosis. Just get to the meetings. You'll hear everything you need to hear. Well, I'm here to tell you that, in my experience, did not work. It was great at first because I had to get to know people. I had to get comfortable with the room and getting used to this weird thing called sharing and people telling each other that what they were struggling with. But once I did that, I guess I had to be willing, and I had some surrender, and I surrendered, and I started doing the footwork.
Yeah. Another thing, too, is, and I heard this very early on, the answers are in the book.
They are.
They are, but if that was all you needed, I could have just gone to the bookstore and bought the book.
Right.
And read the self-help book, and I could have got sober and been fine. But that was not even close to the case. To me, the big book is a roadmap.
Yeah.
But you gotta take the drive.
And I would highly suggest taking the drive with somebody, right?
Yes.
Carpool.
Here's the best case scenario. You're trying to get to a destination, which is sobriety. The first thing you're going to need is a roadmap. You get the big book. The second thing that you need is somebody who's done it before, because they're going to know when you think you're on the road, but you're not, and you convince yourself that you are. Somebody's going to say, "No, I've done this before. I can tell you right now, the road's over there."
Right.
So these are all. I mean, it's an analogy, but
and a little fuel.
Yeah, a little fuel, which comes in the form of a higher power.
There
right?
we are.
Yeah, and fellowship. The fellowship. So that's we don't want to get preachy.
No, definitely not.
We're just talking about we're sharing our experience, strength, and hope of what worked for us and what's worked for others.
Yep. But I also know it can be kind of a buzzkill. And that's why I brought it up, because I did struggle with it at first, thinking I had to do something.
The reality too is if we put half the effort into sobriety as we did to hiding our drinking and keeping our alcoholism flourishing, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a awesome guest today.
Yes.
The first 4 episodes were all dudes, and that's not going to fly.
Too much sausage party.
So we need the female perspective. And tonight we have, or today I should say, we have a great guest. I've heard her speak a number of times. She's got an amazing story.
She's a great sponsor.
She's a great sponsor,
yeah.
Yep, very knowledgeable. So, and she's funny. She's got a great sense of humor. Let's welcome Rosanne.
Rosanne!
So, tell us a little bit about yourself, your sobriety date?
March 12th, 2019.
2019, okay. And we'd like to start the show off with a little bit of not a drunk-a-log, but just a slightly abridged version of what happened. So, if you want to just start from the beginning and tell us how you got here.
All right. Well, I got here by a lot of drinking. That'd be the first thing.
That's not uncommon. Now, you're not from this area. You're from Queens.
Right. I'm from New York City. Grew up in New York City. And, we pretty much aspired to be the next group of kids in the park that was going to drink, all night long. That was what we aspired to be, to take over from the last group of people who were hanging.
Yeah, you got to have goals,
That was our goal, man.
Goals.
Because that was the cool thing to do there. Take over the park or take over the parking lot or behind the, industrial complex somewhere.
So you started drinking young. High school?
Grammar school.
Grammar school.
Yeah, 8th grade.
Okay. And so do you remember what it was like the first time you felt an alcohol buzz?
Yeah, actually, I was really young. We were in Jersey out on the shore, and I was with my aunt and my 3 cousins, and they were having cheese and crackers, 4 o'clock or whatever, and there was wine, and they let me have some, and I asked for more.
Wow.
I was like 12, 11 or 12. I was like, this feels good. So, and I can remember asking for more, and my aunt's, eyebrows kind of going up, and she did give it to me, but
yeah. See, it's interesting, but you catch that first floaty buzz when you're young, and you kind of don't really know what's going on, but it feels nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what do? We pursue that, of course. Can I have some more, please? That's usually an ongoing theme. Just more. Just give me more.
Right. And that first drink my dad let me have with him in the backyard, like a big person at 19. Next thing I asked him was, can I have another one?
Yeah. And it's funny, but you see it, at least I did when I was, a kid, and I'm not a kid anymore, obviously. But it was like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
It was part
feel,
of being, we felt like we were adults.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Like when you had that first drink with your dad, did you feel like you were something?
Oh, yeah, I had arrived. I had definitely arrived.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So what happened from there?
So, I don't know if you ever listened to
The Glum Lot podcast? I do. No, go ahead.
You know, I'm trying to think of his name right now, and I can't. But Russell Crowe. Was it Russell Crowe? I'm not sure if that's who I'm thinking of, but anyway,
Russell Brand.
Russell Brand.
Yeah.
He talks about like what the real gateway into drugs and alcohol is, and in his opinion, and by knowing many women in this program over 34 years, abuse. Abuse
really?
is the number one prerequisite to the alcoholism and drug abuse. And I think the statistics are something like 7 out of 10 women in AA had been sexually abused, in their childhood. So,
wow.
So it's a big thing we deal with,
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole set of other issues. And we always say that, the alcohol is but a symptom.
This is true. This is true. And there's that level of relief you get when you don't got to think about that stuff anymore,
Right.
Don't
have to relive it.
Yeah.
Yep. You could just be part of a whole other thing. And then, a couple of drinks in, you start getting angry. And you start thinking about that stuff. And it gets a little out of control sometimes. Because I was an abused person growing up. 3 times before I was 8 years old. And then, one ongoing. Thankfully, I found this program where I did learn to deal with this stuff in a healthy way. But, it's a big part of the drinking story for me.
The thing about alcoholism and the way we practice it, too, is often we are self-medicating.
Absolutely.
And so I know with trauma, anxiety, depression, all those things, alcohol is a real quick out on a daily basis. And the problem is that stunts any kind of growth that can really help us.
Right.
And so for you, when things came to a head and your alcoholism, and are drugs part of your story?
Oh, yeah.
When that stuff comes to a head, boy, then you're really raw. You're really out there. I mean, without your little crutch, because it's not working anymore, that's when the shit really hits the fan.
That's true.
And that really separates who's going to live and who's going to die and who's going to be nuts and who's going to try to get some serenity and all that stuff. Can you talk to us a little bit about your transition into recovery?
Sure. In my early teens, a lot of people had already said to me by the time I was 16, 17 years old that there was a problem. There were people who did not want to hang out with me anymore. And, it was always at my own hands, and really it finally came down to one night after a Met game and, because I grew up in Flushing, home of the Mets.
Yeah, Shea Stadium.
That's right. And, I drank enough beer I could put my feet in the extra large size, cups that were at my feet and just bathe in them, because they sell you these cups that are
giant,
humongous,
like 32
right?
ounces or whatever, right?
And then we proceeded to go back to my house, which is only like 2 miles from Shea Stadium. And, there was just a lot of people started showing up and there was a lot going on. And the night was tragic. I didn't go to jail. I didn't go to the hospital. I wasn't in the loony bin, but I was in my own head, and that was a really bad place to be. And that was I think it was that next day. My mother was in recovery for many years. She died 36 years sober. I ended up calling her sponsee in Florida because I knew her pretty well.
Yeah.
I said, Ann, I'm having a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. I was 20 and... I was there was just nowhere else to go for me.
Yeah, so you were still young.
I was.
You were still relatively young.
It was 1990, walking into AA, and that was something else.
I mean, so the thing is, alcohol, drugs, whatever other issues take you to such a dark place. What do you think the catalyst was for you to make the move? Was it that you had been exposed through your mother and her friends, that you knew there might be a way out?
I definitely was aware of that. I mean, I definitely had a pretty big awareness of that. I mean, my first prayers, one of them was the serenity prayer that I used to say at night, going to bed with my parents, so it was definitely there. But my, and the looks that I was getting from them on a pretty regular basis,
So it was obvious you were having a problem.
Yeah, it was obvious to everybody but me.
Right.
But, it was obvious to me, too. I was just hiding it because I wanted to protect it at all costs, honestly.
So your denial was in
full swing.
Yeah, like all ours are. And,
but were you also afraid to even entertain the thought of doing something different?
I was afraid of not having a life anymore. I was 20, and this was going to be the end of all the fun for me, you know.
So
that
much
was
more to
scary.
do.
Yeah, and like, you know, but that's what we grew up with. You know, you went to the bar, you went to the park, you went to the beach, and you went to dances. All this evolved around drinking, and I could not see how I was never going to drink again.
So you make that call to this sponsee of your mom's in Florida. What happens next?
She said, "Why don't you try a meeting, Roseanne?" And that was the last thing I wanted to hear, honestly. And I can't believe I didn't think she was going to say that, you know.
Right.
I said, "All right, I'm going to do it." And I went to the Yellow Pages.
Yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day, went to the Yellow Pages.
For all you kids out there. For all you kids out there, the Yellow Pages was a book.
Let the fingers do the walking.
Yeah, so it was a thick book, and you had to look up the phone numbers, and that's how I got into
Right.
It was super intuitive, too, on how to find things.
And it wasn't actually it wasn't Yellow Pages. It was in the White Pages,
Okay.
but AA being the very first one.
Right.
It was basically the first.
It was just above AAA.
So were you doing this for you, or doing it for somebody that told you and all those looks that you said you were getting?
I respected her enough that I took her advice.
Okay, but
Yeah.
who were you doing it for?
Yeah, I just knew. I knew it was for me.
Okay,
I knew I knew I didn't have any other choices.
Right? You couldn't survive in that darkness anymore. It it is overwhelming, you know. Thank God it's overwhelming, really.
Right.
Gives you the gift of desperation.
And when you grow up in New York City, you hang out with any number of groups of people. Like, so if you wore out that group with your drinking, you could just kind of turn to, you know, if you wore out the you know, eutectic parking lot people, you could always go to the 130 Park people. You know what I mean? And you know, they probably had forgotten what you did, you know, a few months ago or whatever. You know,
recycled the group.
Yeah, you could recycle the groups. It was very true. I actually happened to be in with a group of people who cared a lot about me and were saying things to me on a regular basis. And then I was losing them too, and it was painful, and it was right in my face.
Yeah. So you make that call, you get that advice, you say, I'm going to do it. Did you do it?
I did it. I went to a meeting that night.
Just by yourself?
By myself.
Did you raise your hand? Say it's my first meeting?
I did. I actually did.
Gee whiz.
There was a lot of young people there. It was
You're my hero.
What would they call, like, a beginner's meeting?
Yeah.
They call them in Queens.
Okay. So you're at your first meeting, you raise your hand, you're probably nervous, you don't know really what to expect, and what happens?
They welcomed me, you know, and I thought that was odd.
Yeah.
Right? What is this place?
You know, and they were just like, just sit back and listen and try to identify with what people were saying. And so I did that. I was comfortable doing that. And, you know, there were some folks who talked to me after the meeting. I actually knew a couple of people there that
Really?
They were like a year or two older than me in high school and stuff. And yeah, they were like, "Welcome. It's about time, Roseanne." You know,
Yeah.
we
We've
knew
been
we'd see
waiting
you
for
here
you.
eventually. You
You
know,
weren't surprised when you walked in the door. So you start to make a few relationships in the program, and did you get a sponsor early on?
So early on, I struggled with that. I just didn't know. I really didn't know what I was looking for, and of course, I was not willing to be that open yet. You know?
And can I ask you a question about that? Because we were just talking about guys and how hard it is for us to go up to another guy and say, you know, basically, will you go out with me?
Right,
Will you be
right.
my sponsor?
Yeah, will you go to the dance with me? And you know, from what I've heard, and I don't know this, so you know, this is the opportunity for me to learn. Is what's that like for you?
For
You know,
women?
For women, because I have a feeling that it might be a little hard to trust.
Right. So there's major trust issues between alcoholic women. You know, we were battling each other out there, kind of, in some way, you know, where, you know, if you were involved with people with a lot of drug and alcohol issues, there was always a mistrust. And I was definitely involved with a lot of people with drug and alcohol issues. And so coming into the program, I was sort of fascinated at the fact that these women were all having a relationship, but I wasn't quite ready to dip my feet into that yet. Some of the much older women I was okay with, you know, but the ones my age, I didn't know how to deal. I didn't know how to have that kind of friendship. You know, really, I was one of the guys. I was a tomboy growing up, and, you know, I just related to the guys. I drank like one of the guys. I acted like one of the guys, you know. And, you know, so it was just that was comfortable for me. And I did have guy friends in the program. And, you know, there was always those mornings, you know, the guys with the guys, the girls with the girls.
Right,
and,
right.
you know, being 20, that was sort of hard to you know, adhere to.
Correct. Well, you probably hadn't done that your entire life, so.
Right. So what was going to be any different when I got here, you know? But so eventually I figured it out. I figured it out by sticking around and going to a lot of meetings, by, you know, just trying to follow some other person's lead, you know. And I did run into a couple of gals. Finally, I moved to Long Island at some point for college, and, you know, I was able to find someone out there that I could deal with.
So you're going to college away from home, and you're still going to meetings.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
Well, I was in college already, and this was sort of my second semester because that first semester was a nightmare, and I had really drank myself to the point where the dean knew my name.
You drank that semester away.
Yeah. So
I got
that
a
first
0.1
semester
my first semester.
out of SUNY Farmingdale was, that was something else.
Okay.
So,
So you're going to meetings. You're young, and you're meeting people. And did you eventually find somebody you asked to sponsor you?
I did, and you know, she was good for me for a while until I kind of realized that she did not have necessarily a program of recovery under her belt.
Okay.
She had a lot of slogan sobriety, I call it, and she was wonderful, nice person,
like
wasn't
that.
drinking, but was living, you know, on slogans, really. And
Did she work the steps with you at all?
no.
Had you been, well, when you read the steps, when you first came in, you saw the steps, was that something you just looked at and said, yeah, that's not for me?
Well, I picked it apart.
Oh.
You know,
Yes.
that one's okay.
Good job.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, step 2, not so much, you know, because I'm not insane. You might all be a little insane, but not me.
Nobody's going to restore me to sanity because I'm already sane.
I couldn't
Clearly.
I couldn't see that in myself. There was no way, and there was no one really initially to point all that out to me.
Yeah. So you know you put the drink down. You know you're practicing step 1. How did you approach step 2 and 3?
So it took about 2 years until I was finally sort of, I'm in AA, I'm supposed to be this happy, joyous, and free, and all I am is getting angrier and angrier and wanting to knock heads together, you know, being really judgmental, especially other people coming in the program, you know, newcomers. And
Yeah.
I would stay away from people, basically. I mean, I had a lot of friends, but I was keeping it small, you know. I was keeping it small. I was keeping it, you know, part of the clique kind of. And I was just trying to navigate what was going on. And then one day I heard the message. You know, I was...
Can you talk about that
Yeah, I was
moment?
gonna say,
Yeah.
what was
It's
that
really
sort of
interesting,
thing?
yeah.
Yeah, that was something else. I'll tell you what. It was something I hadn't heard before, which is shocking when you're talking about what that is the basis of this thing, right? So I'm in a meeting, and it's a beginner's meeting, and it's a really big meeting out in Long Island, and so this guy is speaking, and his name's Al. And Al was one of those guys I would not even sit in the same row of seats with. You know, he was so insane and so angry, and so all of a sudden I hadn't seen Al in like a couple of months, you know, and then all of a sudden he's the speaker for the meeting. And I'm like, oh, this ought to be good. I crossed my arms and I said, oh boy, we're in for a ride now. And the serenity, the peace, the excitement that was coming out of him all of a sudden. And he started sharing this program of recovery that I had no idea about. And he started to say things like, you know, you really need to write this stuff down, put pen to paper, you know, these concrete things that I was like, and a whole bunch of other things that I just never heard come out of Al's voice, you know, mouth before. So at the end of the meeting, I went straight up to him, and I knew Al pretty well, you know. And I said, "What are you talking about? Because I need to know."
You thought he was really insane.
I was like, something has happened to you.
You witnessed something in someone else, and you said, "That's what I want.
Yes.
That's where I want to be."
Change,
Right.
like a 180.
Yeah.
Well, it was like he was really giving me the directions that I had been looking for. I knew he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
I knew that he was
speaking from the heart, and
he
you
was
got
experiencing this himself.
Yeah.
And essentially, he was somebody that was just like you, I would think, based on what you shared.
that. And you know,
Yeah,
the funny thing is,
without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know, because I could identify with his anger and stuff.
Yeah.
Even though I kind of, you know, was afraid of it.
And you know, the funny thing is the way you describe your feelings before he spoke was many times the most profound things we need to hear come from the least likely sources.
Isn't that
Don't
true?
they?
Yes.
I mean, I remember,
absolutely.
like, before I came into the rooms, I knew not one biker, and I didn't care to. And I've met so many bikers that are just so awesome, and, you know, it starts breaking down walls, you know, because we are, like Brett said, we are all the same.
Right.
They are just like me. I am just like them. And so you hear this message from this guy. Does he expound on what he's talking about to you and explain some things?
Yeah, he goes right into it. He's like, Ro, we've been living this sobriety that has been lacking sorely. You know, the book, it has not been based on the book. And he goes, I'd be glad to sit down and tell you all about it.
Had he been in for a while?
Yeah, oh my God. Al was probably in 15 years.
Wow, even after
Through
that amount of time.
Through the loss of a daughter, to leukemia, to nearly losing his family and his wife, to, you know, all these things.
He'd been through some shit.
Right.
It was real.
It was real.
Okay.
And he hadn't picked up the drink, but man, was he, oof,
Get a little grumpy.
crazy angry, you know? And
So do you sit down with him?
I sit down with him, and I can remember having to literally pull my bottom jaw up to, you know, meet the rest of my face, because I knew he was telling me something I needed in my life.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting, and Brett and I were talking about this in an earlier episode, is that when we're ready to take the next step in our journey, it's there waiting for us.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's always been there. We just weren't ready to see it. And so you entered this thing after 2 years of kind of just white knuckling and going to meetings and trying to put it together and feeling confused. All of a sudden, boom, you have this moment. You meet this guy. Your higher power put this guy in your path, and now you're ready. And so what happens from that point on?
So from that point on, I got a real sponsor, someone who knew the book inside and out, who also was a tremendous presence in the meetings, you know, with fellowship. And she guided me. We started a big book study group. And in that group were a bunch of old-timers who had done this. And, you know, were very serious about it. And they, you know, I learned a lot through those meetings. And then, you know, in accordance, you know, with that sponsor, then we started to do it. We just started doing it.
You start working the steps?
Started working the steps, and I started putting pen to paper, and I started to the process of, you know...
Doing the deal.
Yeah,
Doing the deal, yeah,
And,
yep.
you know, fortunately, you know, I got right through it. You know, I did my fourth step. I used the sponsor, and she guided me. We did my fifth step, and, you know, before I knew it, I had a list of character defects to work on, and, you know, I was making amends to people in my life and just getting right with myself and my family and God.
How did things start changing for you at that point? You know,
Oh, God, I started to feel so part of, to the point where the anger was gone, and I was never thinking about drinking. Whereas, you know, when I was in those angry states, the thought would come up
Sure.
before I had, you know, program. in
right,
my
it was
life.
relief.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. So I was getting tremendous relief. I was facing people, you know, differently.
On the level.
Yeah. Well, even people outside of the rooms. You know, I was looking for a sales job. You know, I was looking. You know, like because I could
Yeah.
look doctors in the eye, and
I'm good to go.
yeah, like it just changed my life. It made me feel different. it made me, the closeness to my Creator was the number one thing, because I knew He was moving in my life.
Yeah. Something that's not really talked about directly a lot, I know, is we talk about a psychic change that has to be in effect in order for us to get, real good sobriety. And so can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the psychic change, and I said, yeah, I had a psychic change while I was drinking. As soon as I took that first beer, man, it was like a psychic change came over me. Everything was right with the world, And the psychic change now, or began at that time, with, just being aware. Always kind of being aware that I needed that power greater than myself to get through this. That He could, I couldn't, and that I was either going to rely on Him or I was going back out. I was going to have a time when there was nothing between me and that drink.
But you never did go back out, right?
Oh, no, I did.
Oh, okay. Let's get to that.
Yeah, Plot twist.
Dun, dun, dun.
So you tell us about that.
Yeah. So
How long first?
All right. Well, 14 years. I stayed sober for 14 years. I kind of did a little marijuana at the end of that, before that 14-year mark. And so that all came about I had the marriage ended. I had 3 kids now, right? 3 kids, marriage is ending, and I move out, and I'm angry. I'm sober, and I got that book, but I'm angry. And now I've put 3 kids, church, a lot of work, meaning job work, in front of meetings. I wasn't going to meetings anymore at all.
So your meetings dropped not only off, but they dropped out.
Oh, it was over with. That whole I was good, but I was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had this. We've heard that before,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I felt that with the combination of having the big book under my belt, and now I had church and kids, and there was nothing that was going to pull me out there. Well, that wasn't exactly true.
Alcoholism is patient.
And it's doing push-ups out in the parking lot.
Yeah,
That's right. So it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So it reemerges. How does that go down?
Not good.
Yeah.
Not good. So now I had 3 kids I was responsible for, It did take a while. I ended up moving then to upstate New York to be closer to my parents who had retired in the Catskills. And, it took a little while, but then I started bartending because I needed money, of course.
Lovely.
And bartending in a little town in upstate New York, a tiny little town. And, everybody knew everybody. And sort of the excuse when I first did pick up the drink, it was through sheer anger. I started dating someone who started, dating a bartender across the street, and that was... that was great. I had never seen that before.
You were going to show him, huh?
Yeah, I certainly was. And
so your life is going off the rails at this point, right?
So, here we go. First day, right? First day, I open up an NA beer, and I start drinking that, right? And I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
I put it in the slop sink, and I opened up a Miller High Life.
Okay, so you're living the high life, which is kind of probably a low life. And what happened from there? What was the progression, and how did you feel about? People say there's nothing worse than a head full of AA and a belly full of booze.
Absolutely.
So what was your situation there?
So not only did it start the physical craving immediately. I had broken the ice. But it started the mental obsession all over again. For the next 15 years, there was not much time where I didn't obsess over drinking or
shit.
or not
15
drinking.
more years. Wow.
Yeah. Or not drinking.
Yeah.
I'm always in my life trying to decide, am I going to drink or aren't I going to drink? And most of the time the drinking won out. And now, at one point there, I did not drink for a year. And really the only reason was because I had gotten hit by a cancer diagnosis. And having been so sick from chemotherapy, I said, oh, I will never drink again. I'm never going to make myself feel as sick as I do now. I'm in the clear. I'm in the clear now.
But you're white knuckling it. You're not drinking.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have a program.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. And
dealing with a whole bunch of other poisons.
Right. And you know what? Things went south again with the husband that I had previously left. And now we were living in Syracuse. And I, came to a point where I was leaving again. And, it just opened up the opportunity for me where nobody was going to be watching what I was doing. And I started drinking again, started poisoning myself by my own hand, And, that just went on for another, I don't know how many years.
But it was, you're feeling, it's progressing. It's a progressive disease.
Oh, yeah.
And it's getting worse, right? And
it's getting worse in the sense that I'm just consuming a lot more. I'm on my own where there's no kids around, there's no husband, I can do what I want to do. When I want to do it, like I always deserve to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, deserving to poison yourself.
Nothing's holding you back.
Right.
So what happens?
So what happens, finally, is after a couple of years of that, I started having a series of, accidents. I'd be falling down somewhere, and I was a blackout drinker, so, I rarely remembered these incidences. People started to kind of ID me as a drunk. And that was embarrassing.
And you're employed at this point?
I am. I was employed. I can't say where, but I was employed.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
So I was hiding it from there a lot.
Yeah.
Until I got into a department with a bunch of drunks.
Oh, you were
yeah,
home.
then we went to lunch together,
Isn't it funny
because the first department I was in was human resources, so that was not cool, no.
Yeah.
But IT was fun.
Yeah, when we surround ourselves with people that drink like us, we get very comfortable. I know my world developed. I would just surround myself more and more with people that drank like me.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we do as alcoholics. But so what changed?
So, going down the road there, there was just a lot. My family members were really unhappy with the way I was drinking. And I, finally got to a point where after another debacle of falling down, hurting myself, ending up in the hospital, I finally really had to take a look at what was going on. Nobody was talking to me. My kids weren't talking to me, and they did not feel sorry for me, and I made a call. And it just so happens one of my sons was down in Florida, had gone through rehab, and I was really impressed with the place, and I called him up, and I asked him if there was someone I could talk to there, and I ended up talking to a counselor there, and in a couple of days, I was down in Florida.
In rehab?
In rehab, in detox.
What was your experience like there?
Well, the detox was, amazing because it was very painless. It was a Valium taper, it was very typical, medically oriented. Because not only was I addicted to the alcohol, I had developed a addiction to Xanax. I had been prescribed it for 15 years, and it was my buddy. It was Mama's little helper,
Well, from what I understand, the benzos use the same receptors, right?
Yes.
And so, they mimic the effects of alcohol.
I was really receptive.
Yeah, I'll bet you were.
Yeah,
so,
and take care of the bad effects of alcohol.
So what happens to you in this rehab?
So I mostly laid low. There was a lot of information to take in. Once I got out of I was in detox for 20 days because, with the benzos and the alcohol, it's coming off those is an extremely dangerous thing.
So that was just detox?
That was just detox, 20 days, yeah. So when they finally came in and said, okay, pack your stuff, you're going to residence, And so, it was scary. It was kind of scary. Here I am out of state, don't know anybody. It's not like I'm down there seeing my son and going to the beach, and
Right.
it's not like that.
Were you hopeful at that point?
I was just giving myself over to the situation.
Mm-hmm. Surrendering.
I
Yep.
surrendered.
Yeah.
I said, "This is it."
Now, were you-
I needed this. There was a time when I would look at people who went to rehab, and I'd be like, "Pfft, they just don't have any will.
Yeah, they're weak.
They're weak." I didn't even have that thought at this time.
Yeah.
Everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen.
Okay, cool. So you go to rehab, you start finding that the answer is in the program, in sobriety, basically, right? Even if they're not
Right.
teaching the program.
Right.
And you graduate from rehab. Where do you go from there?
I went to sober living.
Okay.
Yeah,
For how
I
long?
stayed in Florida. I went to sober living for about 3 months, and I said, I got to go home. I have got to go home. There's going to be a grandchild being born, and my grandkids miss me, and, I was important.
Yeah. Don't you know who I am? I can't live here.
Was sober living with other people, like a peer group?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So we were in apartments of 4, and then some people were in houses that the rehab owner owned, and so I decided I was going home, and I got on a plane and I went back home, and it was November in New York, and I immediately had that feeling like, uh-oh. There's something I didn't do right while I was down there, and I knew what it was. I knew I had not given myself over and put 100% into getting back into the steps again. And although I was reading through the book with people, and I was, providing this awesome,
You sounded great.
I did. I sounded awesome.
We're good at that. But so
I
you're
went back.
realizing it's half measures, right?
Yes.
At that point.
Yes. Thanks for saying that, Mark. That's exactly what it was. I was really focused on getting back to New York because I really hated Florida.
Yeah. Okay.
2 weeks later, I was on a plane going back to sober living
my
in
goodness.
Florida.
Wow.
And I stayed for another 6 months. And in that time, I got a great sponsor, Lisa. She was pivotal in bringing this thing back to me. And I was really willing to work with her because we really identify with each other. We were 2 peas in a pod.
Yeah.
But she was working this thing in her daily life, and I wanted to get back there.
Yeah.
Just to point one thing out, Lisa's an alcoholic, not a counselor.
Not
right?
a counselor,
Or
no,
a
no.
psychiatrist.
She was a gal
Interesting.
I met in the meetings, and it was kind of funny because we were palling around together, and I'm looking for a sponsor all this time, and she's like, "Hello, do you not see me, lady?"
I'm in your face.
And one day I go, "Oh, maybe you could be my sponsor."
My.
So what's really interesting to me about that situation that you were in is to come back to Syracuse and realizing, having some kind of feeling, like a knowing that I better go back, I'm going to fail. That is a miracle. Because
Yeah.
most people will be like, I'll be okay. I'll be fine. Your alcoholism's telling you, you don't need to. That's, like you say, use the word pivotal. Holy
Or be
shit.
ashamed to go back.
Yeah,
right.
that's
and have
amazing.
that fear
Right.
of being
That's
found out
amazing.
and say, "Oh, I failed." My goodness.
So I called the COO of the rehab, and I was like, "Look, I'm in a slippery slope right now. I came home, but I'm just not ready to be here." I said, "Can I come back?" And he was like, "Yeah, where do you want to stay?" I was like, "Well,
fantastic.
You mean I have options where
Right.
to stay?" So I ended up in a really nice house in Pompano Beach, and with some gals that I had gone through the process with,
Yeah.
the whole rehab
Very comfortable,
process
right?
with. Yeah, it was good. It was really good, and I ended up putting 100%.
Yeah. You build your program
I
back
really
up,
did.
And at some point you come back.
And so when I was done, I knew. And by this time now, I was really able to say to my creator, give me a sign, and then to be able to trust that in my gut. Mm-hmm. And so I did. I actually, it was my daughter-in-law. She called me up. She said, "Listen, I'm coming down to visit my mom in Florida. Would you like to come back with us?"
Oh, she drove down.
Yeah, she drove
okay,
down,
yeah,
and by now there was a new baby born, and she had brought, him with her, and it was just exciting to see the
And in your
kids.
gut, you intuitively start to know, I think I'm ready.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Amazing.
did. And I had talked about it with the sponsor and everything. And she agreed. She said, you're on a good standing. You really are. And I think you can go back and handle this.
Starting to have a new power.
Yeah. A new power was guiding my life. Imagine
So,
that.
I know that for a lot of people, when they talk about failing out of rehab, a lot of it is they don't have an exit plan from rehab, and they don't immediately slide themselves back into what they know they're supposed to do with meetings and fellowship and community, and they just kind of figure, well, I'll figure it out when I'm, But so when you came back, what was your plan?
When I came back, my plan was to find a home group. I was on a mission. And guess what? I didn't do it.
What?
I know. I got back here and I was
Jeez.
really in a place where, like, I don't know. I just had to get my life together first. I felt like I needed a job,
Yeah.
I needed this, I needed that, and then I'll get to
But are you-
a chance of picking out good meetings,
Did you fall right back into going to meetings on a regular basis though when you got back?
No.
So what happened?
No, I don't know. I just stayed sober,
Yeesh.
and I was doing Zoom meetings with the gals in Florida.
Okay.
So I was kind of doing that. I was doing that.
Yeah.
I was doing that like twice a week, and letting them know how I was having difficulty, getting up getting up the guts to go to new meetings and meet new people.
So, like a lot of us alcoholics, you were doing it the hard way. For some
Always.
reason, we seem
Is
to
there
prefer
any
that.
other way,
No,
Mark?
I don't
No,
think
I
so.
don't think
Yeah.
there is.
Let me figure out the hardest way to do this.
Right. So, I went to one, and then that one led to another one, and talking to some people, and then hearing some people who I thought had nice sobriety, and then I joined the Main Street group here in Cicero, and that took a while. That whole process took a while, and I got up the guts to ask somebody to be my sponsor, someone who I'd listened to for a couple of months, And, it seems like it was on a dangerous slope, they're not going to meetings, but now I see it as everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason, because I sort of got desperate again, I needed a little desperation.
The gift of desperation.
A little fire under my ass,
hope it never leaves you.
Right.
Yes.
And so fast forward a little bit, you are sponsoring women.
I am.
And you're seeing how much that means in your own sobriety. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Sure. So, first getting back and getting into the meetings and all that, I was really being very selfish. I needed to be selfish. I needed to get a good standing with the sponsor. I needed to get, keep progressing with the book and the steps. And I needed to revisit some of them, and she helped me do that. And, I was 4 years sober again before I started sponsoring anybody. I just was not ready. I just didn't feel it. And I had gone through some more medical stuff that was, kind of hindering me. But, I stuck with it. And then I had a couple of people ask me to sponsor them. And they didn't work out. They didn't stick around, which is always unfortunate.
Yeah, we all know what that's
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Right,
we do,
right.
Yeah. We won't get into it too deep, but we know what that
Happens
like.
more often than it
Yeah.
doesn't. So you're not alone there.
Absolutely. And I'm not a chaser. I don't chase
That's
people.
good.
I will give you a call once in a while and be like, hey, still here, anytime. But that'll go by the wayside too. I don't have any problem letting go of people who I'm not gonna work on it harder than they are, right?
That's always been
Definitely
my
not.
thinking.
Right.
It's like when I get to the point where I want them to get sober more than they want to get sober, I know it's time to back off and just say, look, I'm here, but I'm not going to
Well, we
chase
plain
you.
and simple can't do it.
Yeah, right. It's not going to work.
We can't do
And we
it.
know that. It could be detrimental even, you know what I mean? Drive people away. So
Yeah. Because I don't want to be a jerk about it,
No.
and I don't want them to feel uncomfortable.
You don't want to be preachy.
No.
Well, what I tell them is, when you're really, really wanting this, come see me.
Right.
In the meantime, the rooms are there.
Right. Keep coming
The rooms
back.
are still there. AA will always be there.
And that's what I've heard from your story is you are successful because you kept coming back, even over a 15-year span. That's what people do. They come back, and that's how they get sober. And that's
Yeah, and I mean, even in that 15-year period of time, there were many, weeks and months where I tried to get back here, but but that obsession of the mind was just too great. It was too much. I just had no defense against it at all. And so the sponsoring has worked out very nicely for me. It's nice for them, but it's also nice for me. And I have a couple of gals who are really progressing through the steps. And, I honest to God, I give that to my higher power. I do ask him to speak through me, when we get together and when we're doing, the steps or reading or whatever it is, to let me be able to pick out parts of what we're reading to really zap it into their sobriety.
Awesome.
Here's where you're at. Do you see it?
Yeah.
I think God gave me 2 really good sponsees to make me feel better about me or something.
We'll get you started off with a couple good ones. So. All right. Well, we've reached the end of our time, and we'd like to, thank you for coming out.
Yeah.
And you have the honor of being the first female.
I am
episode.
honored.
I'd like
honored.
to say something about that.
Go ahead, Brett.
I'm going to. So.
Oh, can't stop him.
No, because I feel very strongly about this. You talked about you got some really good sponsees. I will tell you that seeing you do the work that you do, and because we've talked about the work you do and that we do, we're similar in our approach. But, that's what inspired me to do what I do, was seeing how you're doing it with them, right? You take the time to read. You take the time to explain. And so just even through our conversations, I know you're doing the deal, right? And I was so excited to hear that you were going to do this, and I so appreciate it. So, I cry very easily, and I don't want to do it here, but you mean a lot to me.
Cry now.
You mean a lot to me, and you need. I wanted you to know that. I guess.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
But for the grace of God, guys.
Yep.
That's right.
Exactly.
Amen.
So everyone out there in the Glum Lot community, pass this episode along, and we thank you for listening. I'm Mark.
And I'm Brett.
As we wrap up another episode of the Glum Lot podcast, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who tuned in today. Navigating the path to recovery from alcohol and other substances is a journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and self-discovery. Remember, we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're here to provide a safe space for open conversations about the complexities of recovery. Your stories, courage, and resilience inspire us and our listeners alike. If you or someone you know is on the transformative journey, know that you're not alone. Join us next time as we continue to explore the diverse facets of recovery. Until then, stay strong, stay connected, and remember that each day is a step towards a brighter, sober tomorrow. Thank you for being part of the Glum Lot community.